Okay, I've got glasses recording, audio recording, screen recording, and camera recording. Hey guys, Tavis here, and I wanted to show you guys how the masters use dynamic symmetry. And one thing that I discovered recently is the way Picasso uses dynamic symmetry. So what I did was I will show you, I'm going to use these to show you a point of view perspective of this drawing I did. And this is a print that Picasso made called the Frugal Repast. And what I did was I lined up the dynamic symmetry in the computer here, and then I drew the grid onto the drawing paper, and then I blocked in the characters and the elements here and just started to develop it from there. But one significant thing that I did do with this drawing was to improve the design a little bit. Once we go onto the screen, I'll show you that Picasso's original, there was a little bit of information lost right by the plate and the cup and then the chunk of bread. From what I understand, it's a piece of bread there. And then this another piece of bread on the side. I improved that with a better arabesque to create more movement and unity. And then I also created more coincidences throughout the design. But I'm a photographer and I try to draw and I'm trying to paint, so I know there's probably mistakes of proportion and things like that, but I did my best and I recreated the design to improve that a little bit. So I'm going to take these off now. And let's go into the screen. Now I'm gonna make this Photoshop file available for the MasterPass members so they can download it and just take a look at the dynamic symmetry a little closer. I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I did that. So all of the grids that I have, they are available online. I gotta wait for this airplane to go by because it's pretty loud. All right, so this is the original, and just you can tell by looking at it, it's right around the size of a root phi. So what I do is I created actions with most of the basic root rectangles. I'm going to show you how that works. I'll just push play and the grid is placed on top of it, and then I can transform it and turn it and resize it to the painting or the drawing. And here we can see it's a root phi. There's a little bit left on the edges here. I'm not sure why Picasso did that or if that's just a flaw in the recreation that I have. I'll show you the original real quick. So this is what it looks like after the printmaking process. The printmaking process is pretty difficult. For what I understand, you have to etch your design into some type of film, and it makes scratch marks, and then you lay ink on top of the metal plate, and then it's pressed into this nice paper here. But Picasso did an awesome job on this, and that's a very difficult process. So what I did with this is, because it's got that little area on the edge, for my drawing I wanted it to be exactly the root phi, so I just squeezed this in to be exactly the root phi, and then I laid the grids on top of that and drew it out. So that's how I did it. Picasso didn't do it that way, but I wanted to just be exact to the root phi. So once we check out the grid and see how he's using dynamic symmetry, this is the basic armature, and we can see that, let's see, her neck is locking into this vertical, her eye is going across the Baroque diagonal, and the nose, the hand's locked into this horizontal, his scarf is, his eyes on this diagonal, and the eyebrows is the exact diagonal of this reciprocal. So once we break it down even further, we'll go into this, and this is the major area divisions. So what the major area divisions is just 4 smaller root phis inside the mother. So we get the grid broken down a little bit further, and a lot of people that don't really believe that the masters use dynamic symmetry, they'll just say, oh yeah, there's more lines, and you know, with more lines, more things are going to be lining up. That's obvious, but not with the masters. The dynamic symmetry they used is just, they used it as the structure of their design. So we can just look and we can see the shoulders are locking into this horizontal here, the hand is locking in exactly to this diagonal. If we go in a little bit closer, we can see that her arms right down the center of the design, his arms on this horizontal, her arm, her hand is paralleling this diagonal. If we run a line from this point up, we're gonna get the exact location of this edge of the arm. This is lined up with her eye, runs down to the pinky, to the shadow of her shirt, and then down to the edge of this piece of bread. This vertical is lining up with the edge of the bottle. The edge of the cup is lining up to this diagonal. So you can see how the master's using this. And the more you look, the more they are starting to lock it in to this dynamic symmetry grid. we can go even further and break it down even smaller, and you can see how this nose is paralleling this diagonal, his forehead, the diagonal of the hat's going this way, the edge of the hat, the edge of this scarf here, the inside edge of his arm. Even markings on the tablecloth are locking into the grid right here. Go over here, and this one's locking in there, locking in there, locking in here. This is really close to that point. Trust me, it's very, very, very hard to draw out the dynamic symmetry grid. Freehand, it's so much easier to do this in Photoshop, but the masters, they had to use either light tables with tracing paper or something to get the grids exactly how they have them. But so he parallels a lot of these diagonals and horizontals just to keep it from looking too blocky. He uses this to inspire his design. You can see how the arm's a lot longer than it should be. The diagonal of this bone protruding out of the shirt is paralleling this diagonal right here. So you can see how he's using this grid to just inspire his work and inspire his creativity. It's not meant to lock you in like a cage. It's meant to inspire the way you design your art. So keep in mind, you can parallel it, you can lock it in, either way, whatever works best for the design you're trying to create. So that's the dynamic symmetry grid, and I'm gonna just go ahead and draw the arabesque that I thought he was going for. So I was analyzing this a little bit further, and I was just going to do the dynamic symmetry, but I wanted to improve his, you can see how this area here is all jumbled together and you can't hardly tell what's going on there. I think that's a design flaw, but it's also because of the printing process, how difficult it is. So what I saw when I was analyzing further was the arabesque started here, it's coming down, it's going across his shoulders, across her ear and her nose. So this is all due to the law of continuity. It's like a dotted line. We can connect these linear movements, your subconscious will pick up on it. So I ran it down here and I saw that he's coming down here, and then it kind of broke up and I was a little bit lost, but then I saw, okay, he's got this coming around here, and this is coming around here, and he's got a little bit of contrast here which redirects the eye, so then it's coming up the hand, the arm, and then if you follow it up, it's like, okay, it's a little bit lost, but you can see how this curving of the handkerchief here is curving this way, and then there's a little bit of contrast here. What I feel is he wants our eyes to go around this way, and then this, I would say he would want it to come into the bottle, but he doesn't have enough contrast here to draw the eyes towards the bottle. So in my drawing I improved it once I scan this in, and I'll show you even further. So let's take a look at his coincidences, and one thing I noticed about his coincidences, which are edge-to-edge relationships, what I would do is I would follow the line down, create a break, and then I'd follow it again to create movement on that edge-to-edge relationship. But what he does is he follows it down, but then it hits this glass, and then another vertical goes down. And then this mark right up here, he follows that down. So if you draw a line from this point to the bottle, we can see that he's creating a coincidence there. Edge-to-edge relationship, which creates movement and unity. And then this arm right here, I would think the design would be better to follow the arm down, break up, and then hit the glass, but he doesn't do that. He's cutting it in about a half from this point to this point. So he's about a half there. And then he does the same thing over here. This one's about a third, so that he's overlapping shapes properly, but I would prefer to see coincidences that create unity and movement. So the edge of her arm here would be best maybe coinciding with this piece of bread, and then this chunk of bread would be better coinciding with something else, maybe the edge of this. So it's just a little bit off. And then if we run this across, you can see that he's creating a coincidence from the top of this piece of bread to the top of the plate, which is good. And I would run maybe this across. It looks like he's creating a coincidence from the edge of this cloth to the top of the glass here. So that's how I would create the coincidences. He missed a few opportunities to create more unity and movement with this one, and then this one, and this one as well. And he also broke up the arabesque a little bit too much, and the mind can't easily follow this linear path, this line of continuity around, and display on a subconscious level his arabesque in a beautiful manner. So then I looked at his greatest area of contrast, and it was kind of, I know due to the printmaking process, it's a little bit tough to get your values right. He's got a heavy dark area here, here, and a little bit up here. So it's not really consistent to where he wants us to look first. The greatest area of contrast should be where you want us to look first, and then the design should unravel after that. So maybe her eyes, and then it follows down the arabesque and then goes around, you know. That's how the greatest area of contrast can be used to benefit your composition. On the one I did, I'm still learning a lot with drawing, but I tried to make the greatest area of contrast real subtle, and I didn't want the drawing to be as dark as this one. So it's real soft, and then with the Stettler lead holders, I got a 2H and a 4B, so I did that whole drawing with just these two pencils. And the 4B is what I used for the darker areas of the woman's face. So I'm gonna bring the camera down here. All right, so this is the drawing, and it's gonna be a little distorted, but I'm gonna show you how I designed this. With Picasso's, like I said, he starts down here, goes around the body, around the plate, up the body, and then should be going towards that bottle. That's where the arabesque ends up. But in my design, I've got a little bit clearer, easier to follow. So it comes down here, and it's not obvious. These design techniques shouldn't be so obvious that the viewer can point it out and just get bored of it so easily. When it's hidden cleverly, then they can't figure it out, and they don't get bored as fast. This comes down here, goes across the body, goes around the hand, down her arm. And see, I created this arabesque a little bit nicer. It goes a little smoother, so the linear movement hits this piece of bread. I did redesign this piece of bread to have an angle here to complement this arabesque. Goes around the plate, up the hand. So I've got this little lip on her shoulder here, which isn't obvious, and it just looks like the curvation of her shirt. Then the arabesque reaches this point of his scarf, comes around, and then I created a little bit of contrast just to hint to carry the eyes across to the bottle. And then there's a little bit of shadow on his arm here. But it's all hidden, and it's all really, really, really subtle. So I'm gonna scan this in, and you guys can see the final image without all this distortion and camera movement. But I also redesigned this edge here of the blanket. His is a lot sharper. You can see how it's really sharp, and it doesn't complement his arabesque. So what I did here was I wanted to create rhythm within the arabesque. So we've got this curving motion here, we've got this curving motion here, which complements it, and then we've got this curving motion here. So we've got 3 repeating arcs within this design where there previously wasn't any. We can use the lines of the cloth to complement our design. So I've got this curve coming down here, and I don't want it just to run off to the edge of the page, so I create a little bit of contrast in the cloth, which leads the eye back up to this arabesque up here, and we can continue to follow through. So that's how I designed it. I took Picasso's amazing print and redesigned it with composition in mind. I've been idolizing and loving this print for so long. I'm so glad I got to recreate it and teach you guys how I did it and what I did to achieve it. I was drawing in these really small, I've got these really small pads, which I like because they're handy and you can carry them everywhere. I've got a couple of these, and I was drawing in them, and I remember Myron Barnstone saying that I need to scale up my work and draw on a bigger piece of paper. And once I did that with this, I realized that it's true. I had a lot more freedom with my movement. I used the really light pencil, the 2H. I sketched that in. I started real light and just like feathering in the tones. And I didn't use this 4B until the very end, till my design was done. And I wanted to lay in a little bit more value just to create the greatest area of contrast. Man's face, the woman's eyes, and then I created little hints of darker tone to where I wanted the eyes to go, which was around my arabesque, but not too obvious. I also have these details to show a little bit more depth. And I've got a little bit of aerial perspective, creating depth, which is right in this area. So how that fades out and blends into the background. See, his body is just kind of blended into the background, into the shadow. So that creates a little bit more depth. But that's it. Thanks for watching, you guys. Thanks so much for being members on the Master Pass on the Canon Design website. Also for subscribing to YouTube. So stay tuned. I've got a lot more. I'm going to do more of these analyzed paintings and things on dynamic symmetry. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Take care, guys. Bye.